I never thought I'd be sitting here telling you this story, especially not around this time when everyone's posting happy family photos and cozy lights. But here I am, 45 years old, holding back tears because the man who saved my life, the priest who raised me like his own daughter, just passed away last month, and the final letter he left me, it absolutely shattered me in ways I can't even describe yet. But I have to share it with you because if this reaches even one person who's feeling alone this holiday season, it'll be worth it. Before we dive into this story that's going to hit you right in the heart, if you're new here or you've been watching my videos and loving these real-life emotional journeys that make you cry, laugh, and think about your own family, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell notifications so you never miss a story like this one, because trust me, today's video is going to change the way you look at Christmas forever, and if we get this to blow up, I'll be sharing even more untold stories just like it, so subscribe, let's get into it. Picture this, it's Christmas Eve 1979, I'm just 5 years old. Snow is falling so thick outside you can barely see the streetlights, and my mom bundles me up in my little red coat, the one with the furry hood, and she says we're going to church for the special midnight mass. I was so excited because church meant candles and singing and maybe seeing Santa afterward, but as we pull up to St. Mary's Catholic Church in this small Midwest town buried in snow, something felt off. My mom was quiet the whole drive, no Christmas carols on the radio like usual. She parks the car, walks me up the stone steps holding my hand tight, and we go inside where it's warm and smells like pine and incense. The pews are filling up with families, kids my age sitting with their parents, and she sits me down in the front row, right near the nativity scene with the baby Jesus in the manger. She kisses my forehead and says, "Stay here, sweetie. Mommy has to go get something from the car, I'll be right back." And I believed her, because what 5-year-old wouldn't? I sat there swinging my legs, staring at the lights on the Christmas tree, listening to the choir practice Silent Night, but minutes turned into what felt like hours. People started filing in. The service began. Father Michael, that's the priest who would change everything, started the mass. And I was still alone, snow piling up outside. My mom never came back. Can you imagine that? A little girl realizing halfway through the sermon that she's been left there, abandoned on Christmas Eve in the middle of a blizzard. I started crying quietly at first, then louder, and that's when Father Michael noticed me during the homily. He stopped mid-sentence, walked down from the altar, scooped me up in his arms, and held me right there in front of the whole congregation, whispering, "It's okay, little one, you're safe now." But I didn't know it then. That moment would be the start of the only real family I'd ever have, and the pain of that abandonment would follow me for decades. But wait until I tell you what happened next, because the reason my mom left me there, it wasn't what you think. The congregation was stunned. Christmas Eve Mass interrupted by a sobbing child with no parent in sight. Father Michael, this kind-hearted man in his late 40s who'd been at St. Mary's for years, he didn't hesitate. After the service he took me to the rectory, gave me hot chocolate with marshmallows, wrapped me in a blanket by the fireplace, and called the police. But in that small town in 1979, with the snowstorm raging, no one could get out to search right away. They figured my mom would come back once the roads cleared, but she never did. Days turned into weeks. Child services got involved, but Father Michael fought for me. He said to the social worker, "This girl belongs here, with people who will love her," and somehow, through some miracle or his connections in the church, he became my foster parent, then eventually adopted me unofficially in every way that mattered. He raised me in that rectory, Taught me how to read using the Bible stories, how to shovel snow off the church steps, how to play softball in the empty lot behind the parish hall. He was at every school play, every parent-teacher conference. He tucked me in at night and told me stories about angels watching over lost children, and for the first time in my life, I felt safe, but deep down, there was always this hole, this question burning inside me. Why did my mom leave me there that night? Was I not good enough? Did she not love me? And Father Michael, he never pushed me to talk about it, but he always said, God has a plan, daughter, even when we can't see it. Fast forward through years of Christmases in that church, him dressing as Santa for the kids, me helping with the youth group, graduating high school with him in the front row beaming like any proud dad. But then last year, he got sick, cancer, aggressive, and as he was in hospice these past few months, he kept saying he had something important to give me before he went, and just days before he passed, he handed me this envelope, sealed with wax like in old times, and said, read this when you're ready, after I'm gone. I couldn't bring myself to open it until the funeral, and when I did, oh man, it broke me completely, but in the most healing way possible. You're not going to believe what was inside that letter. Stick with me because this is where the story takes a turn that will leave you in tears. So there I was, sitting in my car outside the cemetery after Father Michael's funeral. Snow falling just like that night in 1979. The envelope shaking in my hands because I knew whatever was inside was going to change everything I'd believed about my life. I finally tore it open and pulled out these yellowed pages in his handwriting, neat Catholic school cursive like always. And the first line hit me like a freight train. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, I've gone home to the Lord. But before I go, I need to tell you the truth about that Christmas Eve, the truth I've carried for 45 years to protect you. My heart stopped. Protect me from what? I kept reading, tears blurring the words, and he started explaining how that night after Mass, when the police finally came, they didn't just file a missing person report on my mom, they found her. Less than an hour later, she'd driven her car straight into a snowbank on purpose, walked into the frozen woods behind the church, and she took her own life. Girls, my mom didn't abandon me, she sacrificed herself because she thought I deserved better than the hell she was trapped in. Father Michael wrote that she'd come to him weeks before, confessed everything in the confessional booth, crying her eyes out, telling him she was sick, deep depression after my dad left us when I was 2, no money, no family support, working 2 jobs but barely keeping the heat on, and the worst part, she'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer, 6 months at best. She didn't want me to watch her waste away, didn't want me in foster care bouncing around strangers while she died slowly. So she made the hardest choice a mother could make. She left me at the one place she knew someone would love me unconditionally. The church, with Father Michael, who'd she'd trusted since baptizing me as a baby. But here's where it gets even heavier. He wrote that she begged him in that final confession to never tell me the full story, to let me believe she'd just left, because the guilt of knowing she'd ended her life for my sake would destroy me. And he honored that promise for decades, raised me without ever letting the darkness touch me. But in his final days, he said he couldn't go without giving me the chance to forgive her, to understand her love was so deep it broke her. I sat there sobbing in that car for what felt like hours, snow covering the windshield, realizing the woman I'd spent my life quietly resenting had actually given me the greatest gift, a father who chose me every single day. But wait, there's more in that letter that absolutely floored me. Something about my real dad that Father Michael discovered years later. Something that explains why I've always felt this pull toward helping lost kids the way he helped me. You're gonna want to hear this next part because it's the redemption I never saw coming. Okay, take a breath with me because this next part of the letter still gives me chills every time I think about it. Father Michael wrote that about 10 years after he took me in, a man showed up at the church one rainy Sunday after Mass, mid-50s, worn down, smelling like cigarettes and regret, said his name was Robert and he needed to talk to the priest privately. Father Michael took him into the office, and the guy broke down immediately, said he'd heard through old town gossip about the little girl left at church on Christmas Eve 1979, and something in the story matched what his ex-wife had told him before she disappeared. She'd been pregnant when he left her, too scared to be a dad, too selfish. Ran off to Chicago thinking she'd be better without him, but years later the guilt ate him alive. He came back looking for her, found out she'd passed, then heard about me, and when he saw me helping with the altar girls that day, saw my eyes, my mom's eyes, he knew. He was my biological father. Can you believe that? This stranger was the man who'd walked out on us, leaving my mom to struggle alone until she couldn't anymore. Father Michael said he confronted him hard, told him you don't get to waltz in here now and play daddy, this girl has a home, she has me, and the guy didn't fight it, he cried, begged just to know I was okay, left an envelope with some money for my college fund and a letter apologizing that Father Michael promised to give me when I was older, but he never did, because he said I didn't need that pain. I had enough healing to do from the abandonment I thought happened. Adding a deadbeat dad to the story would have only hurt more, but in this final letter to me, Father Michael included that old envelope from Robert, unopened all these years, and wrote, I think you're strong enough now to decide what to do with it, forgive, forget, or find him if he's still alive. Because forgiveness healed me, and I pray it heals you. I opened Robert's letter right there in the car, hands freezing, and it was just 2 pages of a broken man saying how sorry he was, how he'd sobered up, built a small life, but never stopped thinking about the daughter he never met. Enclosed a photo of him holding a baby picture of me that somehow my mom had sent him before he left, and his phone number from 15 years ago. I just stared at it, this whole new layer of my story crashing in, wondering if I even want to know if he's out there. But something Father Michael wrote next changed everything about how I see my life now, and it's the part that's had me crying happy tears for weeks. Stay with me because this is where it all comes full circle in a way you'll never expect. Father Michael went on in that letter to reveal something about himself that he'd never told a single soul in all the years he raised me. Something that explained why he fought so hard to keep me, why he poured every ounce of love into a scared little girl left on church steps. He wrote that when he was just 8 years old, back in 1942 during the war, his own mother did almost the exact same thing. Only it was a rainy November night in Boston. She'd been struggling alone after his father died overseas, deep in grief and poverty, no food on the table, and one evening she walked him to the doors of St. Augustine's Cathedral, told him to go inside and pray for her, that she'd be right back, but she never returned. The priests found her body 2 days later in the Charles River. She'd taken her own life so her son wouldn't starve. Young Michael was passed around orphanages for years, cold places where no one hugged him, where he learned to hide his tears during Mass, until one kind old priest noticed him, took him under his wing, taught him about faith and compassion, and eventually inspired him to join the seminary. He said becoming a priest wasn't just a calling, it was a promise to that little boy inside him, a vow that if he ever saw a child abandoned like he was, he would be the father he never had. And then he dropped the bombshell. When my mom brought me to be baptized as a baby, She whispered to him in the sacristy afterward that she was scared, that things were falling apart. And he recognized the same desperation he'd seen in his mother's eyes all those years ago. So when she left me there that Christmas Eve, he knew in his soul it wasn't abandonment, it was a mother's final act of love, mirroring his own story. And he swore to God right then and there that he would raise me the way that old priest raised him, breaking the cycle, turning pain into purpose. Guys, reading that I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. This man I'd called father my whole life had been carrying the same wound, the same questions. Why wasn't I enough to make her stay? And yet he turned it into the purest love I'd ever known. He wrote, "You healed me as much as I hope I healed you, daughter, every time you laughed, every time you called me dad even though you didn't have to, you gave me back the childhood I lost." I had to pull over again because I was crying so hard I couldn't see the road, realizing we weren't just priest and orphan, we were two broken souls who found each other across decades. But he wasn't done. There was one final page in that letter that tied everything together in a way that made me believe in miracles again, and what he asked me to do with the rest of my life. It's why I'm telling you this story today. Hold on, because this next part is going to hit your soul deep. After spilling his own heartbreaking past, Father Michael shifted to talking about the years we spent together, all those little moments I'd taken for granted, teaching me to ride a bike in the church parking lot, staying up late helping with math homework under the dim rectory lamp, the way he'd sneak me extra cookies after youth group, how he'd cry during sad movies but pretend it was allergies, and he said every one of those memories was his proof that God redeems pain, that out of the darkest nights come the brightest lights. Then he got to the part that wrecked me all over again. He told me he'd been keeping one more secret, that after Robert showed up that day 15 years ago and left the envelope, Father Michael didn't just hide it. He quietly tracked the man down, kept tabs from a distance through church connections, found out Robert had gotten clean, remarried, had 2 daughters he was trying to be a good dad to, but the guilt over me never left him. He was living just 3 hours away in Indiana, still carrying that photo of baby me in his wallet, and Father Michael wrote that in his final weeks, he reached out to Robert anonymously through a mutual acquaintance, told him his daughter had grown into an incredible woman who helps at-risk kids now. Yeah, I became a social worker because of him, and that if Robert ever wanted forgiveness, the door was open, but only if I chose it. Robert wrote back saying he'd pray for the chance but would never force it, and Father Michael enclosed Robert's current address and phone number, updated just months ago, saying, "I know forgiveness isn't easy. I spent years angry at my own mother before I understood her love, but letting go freed me to love you fully. Maybe meeting him will free you too, or maybe just knowing he's out there carrying regret is enough. Either way, you deserve to choose." Then came the very last lines that I read out loud at his graveside. "I'm proud of you, daughter, prouder than any father could be. Live big, love fierce, and keep paying forward what we were given." That little girl in the red coat grew into the woman who can break chains for others. And when Christmas feels heavy, remember, you were never abandoned. You were chosen twice, once by a mother who loved you enough to let you go, and once by a flawed old priest who needed you as much as you needed him. See you on the other side. I folded that letter, put it over my heart, and whispered thank you, Dad, for the first time without him there to hear it. But something shifted in me that day. The anger I'd carried melted into gratitude, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. Something that's brought more healing than I ever thought possible. But guys, the phone call I made the very next morning, You're not gonna believe how it went. Stay with me because this is where the story turns into hope you can feel in your bones. After the funeral, I drove home in silence, letter on the passenger seat like it was glowing, couldn't sleep that night, just kept rereading every word until the sun came up, and by morning I knew I couldn't let Father Michael's final wish sit unanswered. I picked up the phone with hands shaking worse than that Christmas Eve as a kid, dialed the number he'd left for Robert, my biological father. It rang 4 times and I almost hung up, but then this gravelly voice answered hello, and I just said, "This is the girl from Christmas 1979. I think you're my dad." There was dead silence on the other end, then this broken sob. He started crying so hard he could barely talk, kept saying, I'm so sorry," over and over, and I started crying too. We must have stayed on that phone for 2 hours. Him telling me about his regrets, how he ran because he was young and terrified, how finding out about my mom devastated him but he was too ashamed to face it, how he's tried to be better for his daughters but always felt incomplete without knowing if I was okay, and me telling him about Father Michael, the life he gave me, the letter, all of it, and by the end we were laughing through tears because he said, "Sounds like you had the dad I could have been if I'd stayed." And I told him, "You still can be something, if you want." We agreed to meet the following weekend, just coffee, no pressure, and guys, when I pulled up to that little diner in Indiana, saw this older man standing outside with flowers and the most nervous smile. Something in his eyes that looked just like mine in the mirror. We hugged for the first time and it felt awkward but real. We've been talking every week since, slow steps, sharing photos, stories, even spent last Thanksgiving together with his family. My half-sisters who are amazing, and it's messy. Forgiveness isn't a straight line, but it's healing in ways Father Michael knew I needed. And the craziest part? Robert told me my mom had written him letters he never opened back then, and he brought them to our second meetup, her handwriting telling him about my first steps, my laugh, begging him to come back, not for her, but for me, and reading those, I finally felt her love fully, no more questions, just peace. But the biggest miracle of all is what I've done with Father Michael's legacy now. Because of that letter I started something that's changing lives, and if you're watching this feeling lost or broken this Christmas, I need you to hear what happened next. It might just save you too. That miracle started just a few weeks after Father Michael's passing, when I was still raw from everything. Waking up every morning reaching for the letter like it was my lifeline, and one night I couldn't sleep again. So I started scrolling through old photos on my phone, pictures of him at my college graduation, him holding the first kid I ever helped place in a safe home through my social work job, him laughing with the youth group kids at Christmas parties, and it hit me like a lightning bolt. His love saved me. But it didn't stop with me, it was meant to keep going. To reach every kid who might be sitting alone in a church pew or a foster home or worse this holiday season feeling like nobody wants them. So I made a decision right then at 3 a.m. I was going to start a foundation in his name, Father Michael's Promise, and its whole mission would be to make sure no child ever spends Christmas feeling abandoned. We'd partner with churches across the Midwest first, then nationwide, to create emergency foster placements through faith communities, train priests and pastors to spot kids in crisis like he spotted me, provide grants for families willing to take in kids short-term during the holidays, and most importantly, wrap every single child in the kind of unconditional love he gave me, with mentors, gifts, therapy, whatever they need to know they're chosen. I drained my savings, called in every favor from social workers and church friends I'd made over the years, and by spring we were official. A real 501c3 And guys, the way it's exploded since then is nothing short of divine. Our first Christmas last year replaced 47 kids in loving homes just in our state. This year we're on track for over 300 across 5 states. Corporations are donating, viral stories of reunions and adoptions are popping up, and the most beautiful part? Every host family gets a little red coat for the child if they're little, just like the one I wore that night, as a reminder that they're safe now, that someone sees them, and we've already had kids write letters back saying this was the first Christmas I felt wanted. Reading those breaks me in the best way because I know Father Michael is smiling down. But the story that went viral and put us on the map, the one that had news crews showing up and donations pouring in, you're not gonna believe how perfectly it ties back to that snowy night in 1979. Stay with me because this will restore your faith in everything good. So here's where it gets almost too perfect to be true. Last December, right around the 1-year anniversary of Father Michael's diagnosis, we got a call from a small church in the exact same town where St. Mary's stood. They'd heard about the foundation through our website. The pastor said there was a 4-year-old girl whose mom had dropped her off at their Christmas Eve service, said she had to run an errand and never came back. Police were involved but the roads were bad from snow, just like my night, and the little girl was sitting in the church office clutching a stuffed bear, crying quietly, not wanting to make a scene during Mass. When the pastor heard about Father Michael's promise, he called us immediately. I dropped everything and drove through the night to get there, walked into that church and saw her, dark hair peeking out from a too big hood, red coat someone had found in the lost and found to keep her warm, and it was like looking at 5-year-old me all over again. My heart shattered and healed at the same time. I sat down on the floor with her, no clipboard or official stuff, just asked about her bear's name, Mr. Fluffernutter, by the way, and told her, you know, a long time ago a priest helped a little girl who got left here too. And that girl grew up to help kids just like you. She looked up with those big eyes and whispered, will someone want me for Christmas? And I said, sweetie, someone already does, starting with me tonight. We placed her with an amazing family from our network by morning. They adopted her 6 months later, and the local news ran the story with the headline, Full Circle Miracle. Woman left at church on Christmas Eve saves girl 45 years later. It went viral everywhere. Millions of views. Donations flooded in to expand the program. And now that little girl, her name's Hope, the family let me share that. She calls me aunt every time we visit, sends me drawings of snow and churches and happy families. And every time I see her I feel Father Michael right there with us, whispering, see, daughter, this is the plan. It's proof that pain doesn't have to win, that one act of love can ripple out for generations. And that's why I'm telling you this whole long story today, on this December evening with Christmas lights twinkling outside my window. Because if you're watching this and you've ever felt abandoned, unworthy, like the holidays just highlight what's missing in your life, I need you to hear this loud and clear. You are not forgotten, you are deeply loved, maybe not by the people who should have stayed, but by a God who arranges full circle miracles, by strangers who become family, by the person you haven't met yet who needs your story to keep going. And if you're a parent struggling right now, please reach out for help. There are Father Michaels out there waiting to catch your kids if you can't carry it all. You're not alone either. This Christmas, let the snow remind you of fresh starts. Let the lights remind you that even the darkest night gets broken by dawn. And let my story remind you that the greatest gifts often come wrapped in the hardest pain. Father Michael used to say the manger was cold and rough, but it held the Savior of the world, so never underestimate what beauty can come from a hard place. And he was right. my hard place led to him, to Robert coming back into my life, to Hope and hundreds of other kids finding homes, to this foundation that's growing faster than we can keep up, and to me sitting here finally at peace with my past, able to say thank you to my mom for her impossible love, thank you to my dads, both of them, for showing me what redemption looks like, and thank you to Father Michael for being my miracle. So if this story touched you, if it made you cry or think about reaching out to someone lonely this season, do me a favor. Share this video with one person who needs it. Drop a comment below telling me your own Christmas miracle or the hardest thing you've overcome, because reading those keeps me going. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm going to be sharing more stories from the foundation, updates on the kids, maybe even bring Hope on here one day when she's older to tell her side. We're aiming big this year. Let's get every kid in our program a forever family by next Christmas. And with your help sharing and supporting, we can make that happen. For letting me share the story that's been locked in my heart for 45 years. I love you guys for watching, for caring. Go hug your people tight tonight, tell them what they mean to you, and remember, you were chosen, you are enough. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe.